Coming to you from deep inside the bowels of a great big empty. Get ready for another episode of The Home Defense Show with Skip Coryell.
Hello, American families. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Home Defense Show. I'm your host, Skip Coryell. And if you love your family, care about them deeply, and want to learn how to protect them in every facet of your life, well, then you've come to the right place. We have a great show for you today, and I know that you're going to love it. I've had a great week, and I hope you have too. What have we got coming up on the show? Well, let me see. Segment 1, we'll talk about the ever-petrifying Skip's brain. That's right, I'm killing brain cells left and right. But hey, I'm doing the best I can with what I got. We're going to talk about the news. A lot of crazy stuff out there as always, and I'll put my special twist on it. And then we're going to talk about Patreon. I've got some big things happening with Midwest Tactical Training and with the Home Defense Show, and we're going to talk about that. Segments 2 and 3 are going to be awesome. We are going to be speaking with a man named John Correa from Active Self-Protection. Right now, as you're listening, you should go ahead and go online and search on ActiveSelfProtection.com or go to YouTube and do a search on Active Self-Protection, and you'll get a heads up on what we're going to be doing. This guy is awesome, and what he's doing online is incredible. Then, of course, in segment 4, we will have the wrap-up where I give you my special insight on what I'm actually thinking. But before we get to that, let's go straight deep inside the bowels of Skip's brain. What have I been doing? I've been working hard. You know, I've got all these little varmints that try and steal my chickens and eat my garden and all that stuff. Well, something happened a couple of days ago that has never happened before. I caught a skunk in my live trap, and I didn't really want to catch a skunk in my live trap. How do you get that little guy out of there? Well, suffice it to say, it's a smelly endeavor. I did get him out of there, and he will no longer be bothering my chickens, but I gotta tell you, I hope there are no more skunks out of there. I do not like getting them out of live traps at all. Garden is growing well. My wife and kids are doing fantastic. Been going swimming almost every day. It's been hot, about 85, 90 degrees up here in Michigan. So, hey, that's fantastic. Hold on a second. I have to take a sip of my Frappuccino. Folks, that's fantastic. My diet is still going well. I'm down 7 pounds still, but I need to give that a bit of a jump start. So I think I'm going to start exercising more, maybe going to 2-a-day workouts instead of just one a day, because I've reached a plateau, and I want to get some more weight down, build up some more upper body strength if I can. All right, let's go to, before we go to the news, I want to talk about Patreon.com. That is spelled Patreon, Patreon.com. And right now, if you go to Patreon.com/The Home Defense Show, you're going to see a picture of yours truly and all about the Home Defense Show. I've started a subscriber base where people who like the show or like Midwest Tactical or even just like me can go for extra information, extra stuff. It is jam-packed with training videos, with expanded versions of the Home Defense Show. I mean, this is the free version that you can get off my website, mwtac.com. But I have an expanded version now, and it starts with this podcast on patreon.com/The Home Defense Show. You'll get things like behind-the-scenes looks at the Home Defense Show, bloopers, personal messages from me. You'll get a lot of articles, and you'll get the special Inside Skip's Brain Diary. What exactly do I think from day to day? Mostly related about personal defense, but certainly all things family, God, family, country. That's what I deal with. So if you're interested in supporting me in the Home Defense Show and in Midwest Tactical Training, then certainly go to patreon.com. That's Patreon, patreon.com/The Home Defense Show. There's some stuff there for public consumption. that will give you an idea of what's there. There's 3 different levels. There's 22 caliber level. And that's for $1 a month. You can support me, the Home Defense Show, and Midwest Tactical Training for $1 a month at the 22 caliber level. You'll get certain things there. And then there's a 40 caliber level for $3 a month. And then the 50 caliber BMG basically means, man, anything that I'm thinking, you just get a direct download right into your brain. Not really. But you get a lot of good stuff there, and there'll be prizes, free books, things of that nature. So check it out now at patreon.com/The Home Defense Show. Now let's move into the news. Lots of crazy things happening in the world today. First, let's start out on Fox News. That seems to be the big news this week, the G20 summit. My gosh, the top 20 economic leaders of the world are meeting together in Germany. And they have 100,000 protesters. Let's just read this. Thousands of anti-globalization protesters set cars on fire and tried to block leaders' delegations from entering the grounds of the Group of 20 summit Friday in Hamburg, Germany, as authorities sent in police reinforcement from other cities on the second day of protest. Dozens of police officers built moving lines in different parts of Hamburg and used water cannons to force protesters away from the streets across the city. Wow. At least 45 demonstrators were arrested. Why only 45? And really, if there were thousands, it says thousands of anti-globalization protesters set cars on fire and tried to block leaders. Actually, that's not true. If thousands of protesters were setting cars on fire, there would be no cars left in Hamburg. I mean, it's not that tough a job. I don't like news that is not written well. I'm a writer. I mean, I've written hundreds and hundreds of articles, but they're just so misleading, so irresponsible when they write. It just grinds me. This article is not written well. But the idea here is that all is not well in River City. The world really is going to hell in a handbasket. Just because Donald Trump is president doesn't mean that we're all safe and sound. I think it's going to get worse. We'll see what happens here. I mean, it bothers me when people, and these are conservatives that we're talking about. Trump got elected, and they sat back on their laurels and said, everything's going to be fine. We don't need to protect our families anymore. The world's going to get better. Jobs are going to get better. Everything, happy days are here again. It's just crazy. It's not going to be like that. America has a lot of enemies. They're jealous, they're envious of what we have and what they want. What exactly is an anti-globalization protest? I don't know what that is, and I'm not trusting that the article is right anyways. Maybe these are just screwed up, hateful people, anarchists. Anarchy bothers me. It really does. Anarchy is what happens at the end of the world, when civilization goes bad. So, this kind of thing bothers me, and you have to understand that what happens in Europe, that's like the precursor of what's going to happen in America later on. It is like the movie trailer, coming to a theater near you. And that's what's happening in Hamburg, Germany right now. 100,000 protesters, anarchists, just pissed off people who aren't happy, and they're going to make sure that no one else is happy too. Throw in a few Islamic terrorists, and boy, you got a really bad day. We'll be reading about that more and more as time goes on. Okay, let's get some personal defense news now. We'll go to bearingarms.com. Here's an article. When a robber hit him with pepper spray, this Brooklyn gun store owner got the last blast. That seems like a gutsy move to me. Robbing a gun store with pepper spray. Well, you know the old saying, never bring pepper spray to a gunfight. But hey, let's see what happened. One dumb criminal learned a valuable lesson Wednesday morning when he attempted to rob guns from a sporting goods store. Don't bring pepper spray to a gunfight. This Darwin Award nominee, I like that, entered the DF Brothers Sports Center on New Ulrich Avenue, around 10:55 a.m. and asked to see a gun for sale. When the owner asked the man for his license, the suspect pulled out a can of pepper spray and sprayed him in the face. Now that's just rude. I mean, even for a New Yorker. The suspect then pulled out a hammer and smashed a display case filled with firearms. He was able to get his hands on 2 guns before the owner drew his own firearm and began shooting at the suspect, who quickly abandoned his loot, fleeing the scene empty-handed and possibly suffering from a gunshot wound. Seems like there would have been blood if there had been a gunshot wound. They should know that. Investigators collected evidence at the scene and continued to check area hospitals for a patient with a gunshot wound who fits the description given by the store owner. Dummies gonna be dumb. Well, yeah, that's true. What are the lessons that we can learn there? Number one, pepper spray isn't as immobilizing and as effective as people think that it is. I hate it when women will go to a personal defense class and the end-all answer to violent crime against women is pepper spray. And they got this little tiny thing of pepper spray that they put on their keychain, and then all they got to do is brandish the keychain, and the bad guy runs away, or they spray him once in the face, and, he's fine. Well, we can see in videos, surveillance videos, self-defense videos, that isn't always the case. And another problem with pepper spray is it pollutes the entire environment. I mean, you hit them in the face with pepper spray from close range, and, you get blowback. It hits their face, splashes back on you as well. And obviously, I mean, this store owner, he had enough wherewithal and gumption so that he could still draw his firearm and shoot the guy. So he got away empty-handed. No guns for this bad guy. Well, okay, folks, we are about out of time for this segment. No more time for news. But hey, let me sum it up for you. It's bad, okay? It's bad. You better get prepared. You better get trained. I don't want to be gloom and doom here, but, put down the Mountain Dew. Get off your fat butt. Get out to the gun range. You're going to need to bulk up on your skills. You're going to need to lose some weight. You're going to need to get some more strength, some more energy, if you're going to take on the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of anarchists coming to a theater near you. All right, coming up on this next segment, we've got John Correa from Active Self-Protection. This guy is awesome. You're going to love it. You're going to have a great time. This will totally revolutionize your training, because this is something you can do right at home on your iPhone, on your computer. You're going to learn a lot about crime, a lot about evil, a lot about bad guys and their psychology. While you're taking your break, go ahead, drop down, give me about 25 push-ups, give me some jumping jacks, run in place, and then rehydrate. And I will meet you back here in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. This is Skip Coriel on the Home Defense Show. We will be right back.
My name is Cedric Coriel. Welcome to the Home Defense Show with my dad, Skip Coriel. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back.
This is Skip Coriel from the Home Defense Show, and I want you to have the very best handgun that money can buy. And that's why we recommend you visit Larry Jackson at Elite Firearms and Training. As a concealed carry instructor, I see people every week out on the range with guns they can't shoot properly because they didn't know what to buy. That will never happen at Elite Firearms and Training. Larry Jackson will personally fit you with your very own personal defense pistol. So call Larry Jackson today at 616-299-8715 or visit elitefirearms.us. This is Skip Coriel from the Home Defense Show, and I want to talk to you about keeping your kids safe around guns. I've never been a big fan of trigger locks, but I have to tell you, I have found a product called Child Safe One. It's a trigger blocker, not a trigger lock, and it works fantastic. I tried it out on my kids, and they could not get the Child Safe One off the training gun. I gave them 5 minutes. I sat there and I watched them, and they couldn't do it. Folks, I am satisfied, more than satisfied, that my kids are safe around Child Safe One. Here's the good thing about it. I can get that lock off the gun in under 2 seconds, but my kids can't even figure out how it works. Child Safe One is a win-win for everyone in the family. My wife's happy because she knows the guns are secure. My kids are happy because they're safe. And I'm happy because when the wolf comes a-knocking, I've got that gun cocked, locked, and ready to rock in less than 2 seconds. So go to globalgunsafety.com and get Child Safe One today. That's globalgunsafety.com. Check it out now and tell them the Home Defense Show sent you. Okay, folks, this is Skip Coriel. Welcome back to the Home Defense Show. We're on segment 2, and we have a very special guest. We have John Correa from Active Self-Protection. It's an awesome YouTube channel. He's on Facebook. John, welcome to the Home Defense Show.
Thanks, Skip. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
John, why don't you start out just by telling us a little bit about yourself personally, and then about what you do on the internet.
Kind of a weird duck. My full-time life, I pastor a church in the Phoenix metro area. I'm a veteran. I was in the Navy for 8 years, and I've been interested in self-defense for about 11 years now, and that's grown. I'm a teacher at my course, so I started a self-defense and firearms training company here in Phoenix that we named Active Self-Protection. But what I'm known for now is about 3 years ago, people started sending me real-life surveillance videos of deadly force encounters. Armed robberies, stabbings, carjackings, muggings, you name it. And I narrate them for lessons learned. So I do what they call after-action reports on them. When somebody has an encounter, we walk through it, we see this is what happened, then we go back through it, and we learn lessons. And we find principles for self-defense that are applicable, and that we try to find larger general principles that apply across a multiple spectrum. So then that way people can train effectively, they can train intelligently. And so our YouTube channel has a new lesson every single day. Every morning we post a new one, 365 days a year. We got about, the YouTube channel now has almost 500 lessons on it. The Facebook page has another 600 or so lessons on it that are those nature. And we just train people and educate people every single day on what really happens in a deadly force encounter.
I really appreciate what you do because, I'm a firearms trainer myself. I teach concealed carry, and it just gives me so much more insight into because let's face it, most firearms trainers have never been in an active gun battle before. And so what you do, it really helps us out because we get to see what actually really does happen. Because most of my students, the vast majority, I think, their only concept of a gunfight or a deadly force altercation is what they see on television, and I'm just thinking that that's not an accurate picture for them.
Yeah, it's really not. Hollywood, they set up their scenes to sell movies and for dramatic effect. Very few. I can think of 1 or 2 exceptions where Hollywood, accurately depicts an actual gun battle. They're just ridiculous on a number of levels. So that's the usefulness. Nobody has been in enough gunfights, especially a CCW-style gunfight, a deadly force encounter as a civilian or whatever. Nobody has been in enough of those to say they have broad experience in it. Some police officers that I know, have been in multiple shootings, multiple police-involved shootings, but even most cops have never, been in more than one for sure in their life. Maybe they have their gun in hand multiple times, but having this experience, the beauty of the time that we live in is that we can get actual evidence from all over the world. And there is some interesting cultural differences depending on where you are, but that gives us a third-party view and gives us some insight into what actually happens in an actual deadly force encounter rather than anecdotes. Because like I do, and especially if you've done any work with real life encounters, people's memory and perception sometimes get skewed. So having the video evidence to look through is probably the closest thing we have right now to being able to give us evidence-based gunfighting principles. And so it's a very helpful tool to really help us see the things that actually happen to people who are trained and people who are untrained.
Yeah, I took a class just a few weeks ago from Rob Pincus from ICE training. And that's one of the things that he talked about quite a bit is surveillance videos. He has modified his way of training from several years ago just by virtue of watching all these surveillance videos, because it tells you what really happens in a gunfight or an altercation. And I'm trying to do that myself to make myself a better trainer. And I think if more of my students would watch these videos, I mean, just over and over and over again. I mean, I sat down this morning. I just sat down and I just watched like 10 or 12 of them. You know, a lot of people, they have no concept of evil, or they don't even believe that evil does exist. And I wanted to get your take on that.
It really is true. In most people's world, they really think that nothing bad has happened to them. So most people are not the victim of violent crime on any given year. So they think nothing bad will happen to them. And that mindset of I'm okay is great until you're not. We give the for instances, of course, that nobody went to go premiere of the Batman movie in Aurora thinking that they were going to have a gun battle with a guy who was, carrying a rifle. None of the teachers got up in December of 2012 and Sandy Hook and said, you know what, somebody's going to come in and kill me and all my kids today. Facade of safety works until it doesn't. One of the things we say, I say it again and again and again, is you are your own first responder. You are the primary agent in your own rescue. And by the time the police get there, all the action's over. Once you do accept that fact, then you got to recognize, okay, so is my skill set, is my attitude, my plan, is that up to the task? Most people's is not, to be quite frank.
Mm-hmm.
Watch one video and you see something, and my thing is that if you watch one, well, that gives you an anecdote. And we got to be careful, because the plural of anecdote is not evidence. But after a while, once you've watched, a hopefully a representative sample, or you get a large enough body of work, you start to see patterns that emerge. Any one video can be an outlier. Any one video can be like, wow, I've never seen that before.
So what kind of patterns do you see emerge, John?
Biggest things that I see, we always talk about there's three fights, right? There's the fight before the fight, and the fight itself, and then the fight after the fight. And you got to win all three of them to really win. So the fight before the fight, I see all the time, lack of awareness, lack of understanding and curiosity of your world leads a lot of people to not know that a fight is on them until it's actually on them. Whereas the more awareness you have of your world and your surroundings, the more interest you take in your world, the greater chance that you will have warning of what is coming. That time is gold. Buys you options and opportunities. And I think that is an incredibly important lesson that most people radically ignore. They ignore it because they stick their face in their phone. They ignore it because they let normalcy bias take them over. They just see what they expect to see all the time. So that's a huge one. When we talk about the actual fight itself, I like to kind of paraphrase a quote from the Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest, that the firstest with the mostest is the bestest.
Mm-hmm.
That the first person to put shots on target almost always wins the gunfight, however that goes down. What that means is that probably the single most critical skill that is often overlooked by most CCWers is a fast, 100% reliable draw of your firearm and the first shot in a vital structure as fast as you possibly can. That right there, that skill right there is by far the most necessary skill in a gunfight. So when you see people working on splits, I gotta shoot, 0.17 splits because I gotta put 9 of them in a bad guy. Really, the honest truth, what I see very often on film is that once you put the first one in him, he starts thinking about doing other stuff, and he starts responding to being shot. So running those really fast splits, I have not seen have a material effect on a gunfight. So I don't focus on those as a trainer. I do focus on a very fast, starting slow because fundamentals matter, but a fast, reliable draw, presentation, and first shot on target. Because there is a competition. Every gunfight's a competition. You're competing against the person who's trying to kill you to be first. That's the key one. Some movement. I don't see people stand still and shoot people in a gunfight. It just doesn't happen. So we see a lot of arguments on the range or among trainers about which stance is best. No, am I isosceles? Am I Weaver? Am I Chapman? Am I some combination? Well, I could care less about where your feet are, quite honestly, because you're probably going to move them in a real gunfight. I do really care about what you're doing with your hands, what you're doing with your head, what you're doing to get the gun into the fight. People argue about reloads all the time. I get in trouble with this a bunch. I've probably watched 7,000 gunfights at this point. I have seen on-duty police officers reload maybe 4 or 5 times. I have not seen a single instance where a reload materially affected a CCW gunfight. I've had 2 instances that I can recall where I think a reload would have affected a gunfight if the person had one on their person. But even those were kind of administrative in the end. So it's just a rare thing that people like to get spun up about because they get bored in their firearms training.
About how many shots on average from what you've watched on video? Is it 2 shots, 3 shots? How many shots do you have? It's really
variable. It's really variable. Now, so you get that from the law enforcement officers killed in action statistics. You see that from LEOCA, that people talk about the average cop gunfight is 3 shots at 3 yards in 3 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to recognize, and this is something that a lot of my cop friends don't recognize. I have nothing but respect. I'm not a cop. I've never been a police officer, but I have nothing but respect. I have family members who are, lots of friends who are. But cop gunfights are not CCW gunfights. They start differently. The gunfight itself is similar in some capacities and they end differently. As a CCW holder, I do not end a gunfight with a guy in handcuffs. I don't care about what happens to him. I just want to break contact and get away from him. Mm-hmm. If he runs off, I'm totally cool with that outcome. You know, if we get in a gunfight, I shoot him once or twice and he runs off, that's a great outcome for me. It's not for a police officer. He has to chase that guy down and shoot him some more until he can get him handcuffs. Yeah. So they're different. And the other thing that I see that makes it really variable is you shoot a lot more than you think you do when you have a deadly threat in front of you. We all like to get in this mindset on the square range that, okay, so I'm going to draw and I'm going to put a double tap in that guy and then I'm going to reassess. But what I really see happen quite frequently is that double tap turns into 7. Yeah. You know, that double tap turns into bang, 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 bang. And then later on, when you read the reports or you read the news stories, man, I think I shot him, 3 times, something like that. Dude, you pulled the trigger 9 times. Yeah. I did? Yeah, you pulled the trigger a lot. You pulled it until it went click. So, I mean, I would say I see anywhere from 3 shots is almost the bare minimum. I mean, I see shoot to 5, 6, 7, 8 real frequently. I see more than that occasionally. So it's very hard to say. And the other thing, though, is that in a CCW context, armed robbers, muggers, those kind of guys, carjackers, they're looking for return on investment. They are looking for a score. They want to, get some money or some products, whatever, your car, bounce with it. So when there's a deadly threat to them, they tend to run. They tend to get the heck out of there because they're cowards. And so the concept of, okay, I'm going to have a running gun battle with this guy, that comes from watching John Wick too many times. You know, if you're a gangbanger, sure, you betcha. If you're in a gang and you're fighting over a territory or, you got to stand your ground here and take this guy out for, respect or whatever, yeah, that's great, but that's not the kind of things that I'm going to encourage or train for.
John, we're about out of time here on this segment. But when we come back, we're going to talk quite a bit more. There's so much more to talk about, and your insight is just incredibly interesting. Folks, take a 2-minute break. Go on out, get yourself a drink. I'm not talking about Mountain Dew. I'll just lay down the Mountain Dew, kick it over slowly to me, and just back away from it. Get hydrated, get some water, do about 50 push-ups. When we come back, we're going to speak more with John Correa from Active Self-Protection. This is Skip Coryell, your host on the Home Defense Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
This is Felix Coryell on the Home Defense Show. Always use guns safely and wisely. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Skip Coriel from the Home Defense Show, and I want to talk to you about keeping your kids safe around guns. I've never been a big fan of trigger locks, but I have to tell you, I have found a product called Child Safe One. It's a trigger blocker, not a trigger lock, and it works fantastic. I tried it out on my kids, and they could not get the Child Safe One off the training gun. I gave them 5 minutes. I sat there and I watched them, and they couldn't do it. Folks, I am satisfied, more than satisfied, that my kids are safe around Child Safe One. Here's the good thing about it. I can get that lock off the gun in under 2 seconds, but my kids can't even figure out how it works. Child Safe One is a win-win for everyone in the family. My wife's happy because she knows the guns are secure. My kids are happy because they're safe. And I'm happy because when the wolf comes a-knocking, I've got that gun cocked, locked, and ready to rock in less than 2 seconds. So go to globalgunsafety.com and get Child Safe One today. That's globalgunsafety.com. Check it out now and tell them the Home Defense Show sent you.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if life was like the movies and the good guys always won? In today's world, if you're forced to use your firearm to protect yourself, you will need protection. Firearms Legal Protection is here for you. FLP provides you with seasoned, experienced attorneys that handle your criminal and civil matters as a result of you protecting yourself. FirearmsLegal.com provides its members with uncapped attorney's fees, bail bond protection, and coverage in all 50 states. We are not a reimbursement plan. You can access uncapped attorney's fees for as low as $10 a month. Firearms Legal members are provided with educational services, training videos, and access to our vast national attorney network. While you're protecting yourself, let Firearms Legal protect you.
Listen up, folks. This is important. There are plenty of legal protection services out there, but none will protect you as well as Firearms Legal Protection. This is the one I use and the only one I recommend. Visit firearmslegal.com/Midwest Tactical and protect your family now. Okay, folks, this is Skip Coriel. Welcome back to the Home Defense Show. We are speaking with John Correa from Active Self-Protection. John, what you're saying is just fascinating to me as a trainer. I watch those videos and I just learned so much about real-life gunfights. One of the things, John, that I get over and over again in my classes, and maybe you do too, is I'll get, soccer moms in there. I'll get doctors, lawyers. I'll get factory workers. Just everyday people who really don't want to be in a gunfight. They're not into this kind of stuff. They're just there because they're scared and they want to feel like they can protect themselves. But they really haven't hashed it out in their own mind about the morality of deadly force. And a lot of my students are Christians, and I'm a Christian. I know you are too. How do you explain to people about the biblical morality of using deadly force?
Well, it's an interesting topic, and I think that people of good intent disagree a little bit here on some of this stuff. So I'll give you my best bet. I'm not telling you that I have the fount of all knowledge from God at all times. Okay? I am a Christian. I'm a pastor, seminary grad. I know how to do all that stuff. Okay. But hopefully what we would love is if our laws in our jurisdiction, okay, that every law was a moral law and every good thing was ensconced in our laws. But that's just not the case. So when we talk about legal self-defense, doesn't always mean moral self-defense. As I read the scripture, so I do not believe that either a praise the Lord and pass the ammunition or a, Jesus will protect me and therefore I don't need to, protect myself. I don't think either one of those mindsets is effective or biblically accurate. Here's what I do see. I think some scriptures are abused and overused and not brought to bear correctly. My biggest goal in life, I just want to get to the end and from Jesus here, well done, good and faithful servant. So everything that I do is arranged around that goal. Now, I wish that I did it more consistently, like most of us would say, but that's what the hope is. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I recognize that every human being is endowed with incredible worth and value and dignity. In my worldview, that's because we're bearers of the image of God. We are unique in all creation. And every single human being is worth something. So I can never take the attitude that my life is not worth something, but I also can never take the attitude that someone else's life is not worth something. So I have to be very careful and judicious in my use of deadly force because I am impacting somebody who is made in the image of God. Now, how does that work? Well, I think there are some principles that we can draw from Scripture. For instance, my self-defending Christian friends love to point to Luke 22:36 that Jesus said, "Let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one." And that was not a kitchen knife. That was not a hunting implement. That was the short sword that Roman soldiers carried and conquered the world with. It was a weapon. I think Jesus authorizes the use of tools to protect ourselves. Great. I think, to me, in terms of using deadly force, it comes from a couple of places, and it comes from the book of Exodus. You know, you read, of course, in the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20, you shall not murder. Hopefully you're reading a translation that says you shall not murder, not you shall not kill, because the word there means murder. That's in Exodus 20. You get to chapter 21, and there's some discussion. Chapter 22 does as well. And chapter 22 is really important. 22:1 and 2 talks about a thief breaking into your home. And God says there, if he struck so that he dies while he is breaking into your home, he says there's no blood guiltiness there. You're totally okay. But if the sun has risen on him, and that principle says if he's escaped, if he's gone, and the threat has passed, and then you go and kill him, says then there's blood guiltiness. So I think that the principle established all the way back there is that you're always okay to defend yourself and your life. If somebody breaks into your home, they're a threat to your family. They're a threat to you as a person. And so therefore, if you defend that and they die in that, then that's on them, not on you. There's no blood guilt. But vengeance is not your purview. Teaching someone a lesson, that's the job, from what we hear from Romans 13, of a duly elected and a duly appointed government. I think as a self-defender, what we say is I never want to take a life. I agree with what you said about, your average person coming in. I don't want to use my gun in self-defense. Neither do I. I'm certainly a hobbyist. I'm a professional at this, and I don't want to use my gun to take somebody's life. That's a serious thing with serious repercussions. But I recognize that I have a right to defend myself, that I'm a bearer of the image of God too, that my wife deserves to grow old with her husband. My children deserve to have their father around to love them. My church deserves to have their pastor around, and I have to be here for that. So I can defend my life. Nobody has a right to take that from me. And so that's why I'm so big a trainer on, when we talk about shooting somebody, we don't talk about anything other than shooting to stop the threat. I don't talk about shooting to kill. I'm not trying to kill somebody. I don't care about that. If he dies in that, well, then that's on him. But I'm trying to stop a deadly threat against me. Once that threat is stopped, I stop. And if he lives through that, if he scampers off and then goes to the local hospital and through the magic of modern medicine, they save him, that's fine. The government will deal with him. It doesn't bother me at all, because my goal is to stop a deadly threat. If I stop the threat and my family's safe, awesome. But I have the right to stop that threat given to me by God. I think it is recognized and protected by the United States Constitution. And I live in Arizona. It's protected in the Arizona Constitution as well. I live in a constitutional carry state, so we don't need a government permission slip to carry a gun here. And I think those all work out. So to me, the legal use of force and the moral use of force should match up. That if my life is imminently threatened, that I don't use deadly force when I'm not trying to defend my life or the life of someone else, that I've done what I can to avoid a problem within a reasonable framework, and my actions are reasonable to stop that threat. Before God, I'll be fine. And if I'm fine before God, I should be fine in most cases before the state.
John, one of the things that gets thrown at me all the time is this concept that Jesus is love. Jesus is love. Mm-hmm. He would never hurt another person, all of this. And, turn the other cheek. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I think so. Jesus' command to turn the other cheek, incredibly important, right? That's part of the Sermon on the Mount. And if you don't think that has any bearing on your life as a Christian, you can't read the same book I'm reading. Mm-hmm. But I think you got to understand that correctly. And he says when someone slaps you on the one cheek, you turn to him the other also. In Jesus' world, that was not speaking of a thug trying to steal your wallet. That's not somebody who's trying to murder you. That was an offense. That was somebody who was trying to insult you. And so Jesus says when someone insults you, don't retaliate to the assault. Recognize it for what it is and continue to reach out to them. So I think a misapplication of that the physical violence is really incidental in the real understanding of that. He's really talking in a far more fundamental way about somebody who's insulting you. And actually that's a far harder and a far higher commandment, because, somebody punches you in the mouth, that's a rare occurrence in most people's world. Somebody insulting you, an everyday occurrence, and how you deal with that is incredibly important. To say that Jesus is love, hey man, 1 John 4 says God is love, right? But what is love? Love is not an ushy-gushy emotion. Love is earnestly desiring God's best for someone and doing what you can to see that come about. And restraining someone from sin is a moral good. Stopping somebody from murdering, stopping somebody from committing armed robbery, stopping somebody from threatening to kill someone is a moral good, because they'll be culpable for that. And they're going to stand and answer before God for that. So stopping that is actually an act of love. To say that Jesus was a pacifist, come on, man. Read the book. When Jesus cleansed the temple, I've heard people make a lot of excuses for how this goes down from a pacifist perspective, but it just doesn't work for me. When Jesus made a whip and cleansed the temple, let's be very clear. You cannot say that he could have done that without threatening violence against those people. When Jesus shows up to the temple and says, my Father's house shall be a house of prayer, and you made it a robber's den, and I'm shutting down this business in the court of the Gentiles right now. If he had just come and said, hey, you need to shut your business down, they wouldn't have listened to him. Why did he have the whip? The whip was there to enforce his will. Now, some people say, well, he didn't use it on the people. He just used it on the animals or, whatever. He didn't threaten the people with it. If somebody's not threatening you with that and you don't want to do what they say, then it wouldn't have worked. So in some sense, Jesus, at some level, was willing to use violence to enforce his will, or at least the threat of violence to enforce his will. So to say Jesus was a pacifist ignores that part. And I do think, of course, Jesus is my example for all of life, and I want to be as like him as I possibly can. Jesus had very little patience for religious bigotry. He had very little patience for people who abuse authority. He had very little patience for those who would harm the innocent. And that's a wonderful ethic. And he's the good shepherd. And he says, I'm the good shepherd. I protect my sheep from the wolves. So, you hear all the time about sheep and sheepdogs and wolves and all that stuff. I don't like talking about sheepdog stuff. My shepherd is Jesus, and Jesus taught me to be a shepherd. A shepherd has a shepherd's crook, which is not only a tool to help protect, but it is a tool that can defend as well. To stop somebody who means you deadly harm is, if properly understood and properly done, an act of love. Where I see most people get into trouble is they think if I have to use my gun, I'm going to be angry at somebody. No, probably not. You go talk to the vast majority of people who are in a CCW gunfight, and the emotion that they are feeling in that moment is not anger, it is fear.
Yeah.
It is, I have a reasonable fear for my life, and so I acted to stop the threat that caused me to be in fear for my life. If you are acting in anger, I'm going to stop that guy. He has no right to do what he's doing. I'm going to go get him. Now you've left a legal perspective of lawful self-defense, and you've also left, I think, a biblical motif of self-defense.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. People, they tend to trip over the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. I mean, in the Old Testament,
Same God.
Yeah, it's the same God, but it's hard to wrap your head around a God like that.
Think about this, that Jesus is God himself who came for us, died for our sins, and rose again. It's him who we trust, right? So he came to show us the ultimate example of that. And in that ultimate example of God's love, that is every bit the same God who in the Old Testament provided the Passover, who said, all you people, I want you to have in your home tonight, I want you to eat a quick meal, a very fast prepared meal, and paint the doorposts with the blood of the Lamb, and I'm going to pass over you in judgment. So here's this place of love, here's this place of protection, here's this place of safety, while judgment goes on all around you. And I'm going to send you out. That's the same God who did that. I love you so much, I'm going to give you a moral code so that you can live like I live. You can reflect my character. And I want you to do the best you can at this. And I'm going to provide you a means to make it right when you don't live to that. That's a very gracious God. That's a very loving God. So we overlook those in the Old Testament as well. We also overlook in the New Testament. Gosh, man, go look in Acts 5. Don't lie. Don't lie to God, because he'll kill you. Acts 5, Ananias and Sapphira. He has every right to do that. So when we mix that up, when we don't have a well-informed understanding of Scripture, and I think most American Christians are woefully ignorant of their Bible. They don't actually stick to it and read it every day. If you read it every day, if you study it, you get in there with good tools, you generally form a good understanding of it, with maybe a little bit of help from those who do it professionally, but most people don't, and so that bleeds over into their self-defense like every other area.
John, I agree with you. But we are just about out of time here on this segment. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and it's been educational for me on a whole lot of levels. But before we go, John, tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can watch your videos online.
Videos are posted every day on our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/active self-protection, or just go to YouTube and search active self-protection, 3 words, and it'll pop right up. You can also find us on Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/active self-protection.
All right, John, thank you very much for being on the Home Defense Show. We will come back in a few minutes with segment 4 and the wrap-up. While I am away, I want you to go out, run around the block a couple of times, get your heart rate up, watch a couple of John's videos, and that will get your heart rate up all by itself. This is Skip Coryell on the Home Defense Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Welcome to my dad's Home Defense Radio show. You're gonna love it.
Hey folks, this is Skip Coryell, host of the Home Defense Show. I want to tell you about my book, Civilian Combat, the Concealed Carry Book. More and more people across the country are seeing the dangers in society and deciding to carry concealed to protect themselves and their families. My new book lays it out step by step. It'll teach you how to protect and defend the ones you love. Get the benefit of 17 years of teaching experience and a lifetime of training for this important role in society and in your family. You can get Civilian Combat real easy. Just go to Amazon.com, search on Skip Coryell Civilian Combat. It'll pop right up there. Don't put it off any longer. Get Civilian Combat, the Concealed Carry Book, by yours truly, Skip Coryell. This is Skip Coryell from the Home Defense Show, and I want you to have the very best handgun that money can buy. And that's why we recommend you visit Larry Jackson at Elite Firearms and Training. As a concealed carry instructor, I see people every week out on the range with guns they can't shoot properly because they didn't know what to buy. That will never happen at Elite Firearms and Training. Larry Jackson will personally fit you with your very own personal defense pistol. So call Larry Jackson today at 616-299-8715 or visit elitefirearms.us. All right, folks, welcome back to the Home Defense Show. This is your host, Skip Coryell. We have been speaking with John Correa, and we have a lot that we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, I have a beautiful little 6-year-old girl, my little princess. Her name is Amethyst. She's sitting right here on my lap. Amethyst, say hello to the Home Defense Show.
Hi.
All right. Amethyst, it's about 85 degrees out. It's really hot. What are you going to do right now?
Swim
You're going to go swim? Where are you going to go swimming?
at Aunt Debbie's pool.
Aunt Debbie's pool. That will get you so cooled off and make you feel so much better, won't it?
Yeah, and we're going swimming with Philip and Rebecca.
All right. Will you be very careful and swim safe, okay?
I'll try.
All right, sweetheart. I'm going to talk to the other people here on the Home Defense. So you take off and you come back and say hi when you're done, okay?
Okay.
All right. Love you, honey.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. That was my 6-year-old daughter. You've heard her before on some of the outtakes. That's the reason I carry. You guys know that. I got to keep those children safe, keep my wife safe, and I'm serious about that. But John Correa from Active Self-Protection, that guy is serious. He's knowledgeable. Man, he's probably the most experienced gunfighter who has never been in a gunfight. Boy, and after listening to interviews, I understand that. He is just really good at what he does. Now, some of the things that he talked about just made a lot of sense to me after watching the videos, made more sense. One thing that he said was, every gunfight is a competition. And I never really thought about it that way before. But he's absolutely right. It is a competition. It's one-on-one. Mano y mano. It's me against the bad guy. And you want to win. You definitely want to win. I have always advocated that gunfighting is a battle of milliseconds. You're racing against time. You always ask, what is more important, accuracy or speed? And I think John echoed that you got to have both. You have to get that first critical hit. And that's the competition. You want to be the first person to get that critical hit. And if you do that, you got a good chance of winning that gunfight. Winning as in, hey, I stayed alive and I'm all in one piece and I'm not in a wheelchair. That's the goal. We don't want to kill people. We really don't. I mean, I certainly don't. After watching the videos on activeselfprotection.com, I can, it got my heart rate up just watching those. I think everyone should watch it, even if you're a little bit squeamish. Go to activeselfprotection.com and watch, a dozen of those videos, because every gunfight is different. They all have their own personality, their own dynamics. The details are always different on every single gunfight. Don't make the mistake of saying, okay, I'm going to study this gunfight, or this is what happened to a friend of mine, so this is what I'm going to practice for, and that's all you practice for. Because your gunfight is going to be totally different. People make the mistake of practicing for one scenario, and then when it doesn't happen that way, they don't know what to do. They get confused. They hesitate. And, hesitation will kill you in a gunfight. John talked about the things that he teaches and that he emphasizes. One is the draw, a quick, clean, smooth draw that gets you into the fight. Prior to that, last week, Gabe Suarez, he talks about being deliberate, being willing to do that and mentally and emotionally able to get into that gunfight. And John talked about the morality of gunfighting, because I think that's one of the things that slow my students down. They're just not convinced that taking a human life in self-defense is a moral thing to do. And I think it's just because they've never studied it. They've never broken it down. They've never analyzed it. John did a really good job of doing that for us. He talked about Masad Ayub, deadly force, judicious use of deadly force class. Awesome class. It's I believe when I took it was like 32 hours. It's all classroom. And it talks about legally and morally, when are you justified the use of deadly force? And you walk away from that class with a much better idea in your own mind. And that helps you be deliberate when you get in a deadly force confrontation. And that critical hit, you have to be accurate to get that first critical hit, but you also have to be fast. Always practice your draw. Stand in front of the mirror with an unloaded gun or a training gun and watch yourself as you draw. Be smooth, be deliberate, be safe, don't muzzle yourself, and just do it over and over again, because you got to get that muscle memory ingrained in, every cell of your body, so that when it happens, you don't have to think about it, you just do it, and do it quickly. Accuracy. You have to make that accurate hit. Most of these gunfights that I see, they are close up. They are not long drawn out gun battles, and John talked about that. They are from 3, 5, 10 feet, maybe 15 feet on the outside, but most of them are up close. So you've got to get those hits, those accurate chest hits. It was interesting to note that John said, once you get that first critical hit, something in the upper chest, the bad guy, he stops thinking about killing you, and now he's thinking, gosh, I've just been hit. The ante is up. I could actually die. And that will help in a psychological win over your competitor. And again, it is a competition. What else did he talk about? He talked about there's 3 fights, and you have to win all 3. The fight before the fight during the fight, and the fight after the fight. The fight before the fight, that's your situational awareness as part of your software, your warrior mindset. Always looking around, always knowing your surroundings, knowing where to go and where not to go. The fight that you avoid is a fight that you've won. You can avoid a lot of fights. I've carried for 17 years and I have never had to fight, primarily because I see the danger coming, I get out of the way. Remember, one of my codes is when the crap hits the fan, don't stand in front of it. If you see it coming out in the distance, just back up, walk away, go around it. Do what you got to do to avoid that fight. It's very, very important. And then the fight during the fight. That's where the speed and the accuracy comes in. I just love those Rob Pincus ICE training targets he has. They're called balance of speed and precision. I use those in every class that I teach now. I just use it today. I was training a man on our church safety team, and he had to qualify. We use those targets to qualify. Just go to icestore.us, and you can check those out. They're affordable, and they're just excellent training for balance of speed and precision. John talked about moving and shooting. Moving and shooting, I keep hearing that over and over and over again, no matter who I train with, whether it's Dave Spalding or Gabe Suarez or Rob Pincus. They always say, hey, move and then shoot. Move and shoot. Move, shoot, and live. And you have to practice that. Incorporate movement into your training, into your personal training. You will not be disappointed. Again, when the crap hits the fan, don't stand in front of it. Get off to the side, move off to the line, move and then shoot. If you can make it to cover, move to cover and then shoot. John said, hey, people don't have an accurate picture of what a real-life CCW gunfight is. Remember, he talked about there's a difference between a police officer gunfight and a CCW type gunfight. We're not trying to put the guy in handcuffs. We're not trying to arrest him. We're just trying to stay alive. And that is the number one preferred outcome. We just want to flourish. We want to be healthy. We want to go home to our family. If the guy gets away, fine. He's gone. He's out of the way. You're alive. Go home to your family. Hug your wife and kids. That's what it's all about. And then the fight after the fight. Don't let down your guard too early. Several of the videos that I watched on ActiveSelfProtection.com, the guy let his guard down too early. He shot one guy, then went after the second guy, but in the process he turned his back on the first person that he shot. That person that he shot went down, but then he came back up again, and he ended up shooting the good guy in the back a couple of times. And that was the difference between winning that gunfight outright and not getting hurt and going to the hospital, and he may have died. I'm not sure on the outcome of that, but he was definitely hit in the back a couple of times. Make sure that you win the after the fight portion as well. It would have been real easy for him, instead of shooting one to the chest, bam, 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 there's 3 to the chest. Don't get in such a hurry that you do a sloppy job on the first bad guy. Do what you got to do to survive. So win all 3 fights, before the fight, during the fight, and after the fight. And that's what I saw with John. That's what I took away from it. I am definitely going to keep viewing his videos on a daily basis. It keeps me sharp because it reminds me that, hey, this stuff happens every day, not just in America, but all over the world. And it reminds me that life is precarious. We are vulnerable. Anyone can die. I recommend that you do that as well. Go ahead and subscribe to his YouTube channel so that you can get notices when he puts up new videos. And he does this every single day. I can't believe they do this every day. It's a good idea to do that. Incorporate that into your training. All right. One thing I wanted to mention, the audio quality on the interview with John wasn't the best. I apologize for that. There's nothing I could do about it. It was just atmospherics or, whatever it was. That's the way it came through, and I just couldn't fix it. But thanks for struggling through that. Go on out now to patreon.com, patreon.com, patreon.com/The Home Defense Show. Take a look at what I have there. A lot of stuff that you can subscribe to. Please help support me on patreon.com. Obviously I need money for, better audio equipment and software and things of that nature. When you subscribe, you help support the Home Defense Show and all the things that I do to help teach you guys how to protect yourselves and your family. Obviously, go to Amazon.com, get Civilian Combat. That helps out too. That'll help me and help you. Next week, we're going to be talking about the red-headed stepchild of the Second Amendment, and that would be open carry. I know it's controversial, but we're going to talk to a couple of open carriers, get their ideas on it. These are serious guys, and I think you will enjoy that. Brian Jeffs and Nathan Nephew, they are the authors of My Parents Open Carry. Okay, folks, that about wraps it up for this week's episode of the Home Defense Show. I'm your host, Skip Coryell. I will see you next week. Until then, remember, your purpose in life is to find something greater than yourself and serve it. Always remember God, family, country in that order. It's important how you live, but it's equally important how you die. Your family and the ones you love need your protection, so train, always train, stay alert, stay alive. Until next week on the Home Defense Show, this is your host, Skip Coryell. God bless you, God bless your family, and God bless America.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Home Defense Show. Now, get out there and protect the ones you love. We'll see you next week with more of the best in home defense.
Bye-bye, boys! Have fun storming the castle!